morning. I'm Ann Duman, a displaced Mayflower resident. We are being hosted basically by the Faulkner County Citizens Awareness Group that has been so helpful to all the Mayflower residents by informing us of everything about the oil spill, because I was never talked to, or no one ever gave me any information about what was going on there until I attended one of their meetings and found out everything. We do not have a really tight agenda. Our welcome is here, and Emily Lane is not able to attend today. So she was supposed to send me some stuff about updates from our last meetings, anything that we need to look forward to. But instead, she sent me a whole bunch of documents. So on this back table are a lot of documents about, there's the Exxon hazmat sheet, there's the simple version that, I could even understand hazmat sheet, interpreting the hazmat sheet. A lot of other information there, so feel free to pick up one of these. And then we have Ann, and please say your last name for me.
Riddell's,
okay. And she is a retired psychiatrist, and I told her, well, she's semi-retired because she's been a lot of help to me, so I know I'm working. But she is going to help us some and talk some about PTSD and how to deal with going through a crisis such as we did in Mayflower. Her friend Joanne Duman, okay, is going to start this off by talking a little bit about
climate change.
So we'll let her get started, and if you have questions, you can stop and ask questions. If you're a speaker, stay in this area because this is where the speaker is that's going through. And I know it does not look like we have a whole lot of people here as far as residents and stuff like that. And that's why we were working so hard on getting the live stream or the Ustream working, because a lot of the residents in Mayflower are too sick to come to a meeting, but they want to know what is going on. So they're either, some of the more aged people don't know how to use Facebook and don't know how to use live stream, but they have their children at their house with them right now with their laptops, so they can show them what is going on in the meeting. And the PTSD aspect of this meeting was, I asked the question of the Mayflower residents, is anyone out there still sick? Does anyone still need help? Because I'm not there anymore. I had to leave. I was so sick my doctor said I could not go to my house anymore. I was flooded with answers. With either we're sick and I'm taking off so much because I'm sick that I can't take off to come to your meeting, but I want to see it. And so that's why we have, Sam is going to record it and post it on YouTube so people can see it later that can't see it now. And then we also have the Ustream set up and links to the Facebook pages so that people can talk with their parents and show it to their parents, and especially get some information about the PTSD and what we should do going forward. We also have a gentleman that is here he's a retired hazmat, and he's going to give us a lot of information on that. What is your name again, sir?
Jeff Bongoski.
Oh, okay, Jeff Bongoski. That's as good as I can speak from Okay, and then April Lane will be here a little bit later, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the database where you can plug in your different health symptoms and issues that you've had. And it's something she's been working with another group with for some time, and she's going to give us a little update on that. Emily Harris is also here. She's run off to the leftist and gone up to Northwest Arkansas, but she made the trip back, and she has some information to share with us also. And then we'll wrap it up with Genevieve showing us some pictures of the cove, what it's like now, and giving us some more, accurate and timely information. Since I haven't been there since August, I don't have a clue what's going on there. So, thank you. Let's welcome Joanne.
Hi, I'm Ann Duman, and Joanne will talk about climate change today.
the relationship between our atmosphere and the rush to market by fossil fuel companies. She's a retired federal executive who worked 2 years for EPA in hazardous waste enforcement and spent half of her 32-year career supervising scientists conducting environmental impact studies. She has a BS degree from the University of Texas at Dallas and an MS degree in economic research from the University of North Texas in Denton. She also completed a graduate program in water resources planning. A native of Oklahoma, she retired in 2011 and moved to Texarkana, Texas to be near her son and his family. In August 2013, she completed climate training with Al Gore in Chicago, along with 1,300 others from all 50 U.S. states and 170 other countries. Please help me welcome Joanne Duman.
Bring up my Mayflower presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got somebody else's up there. You don't want to do his meeting?
Well, I'm eager to hear what Jeff says, so while you're doing that, let me go ahead and start. I want to thank you for letting me come to talk to you about something that I care a lot about. And that is climate change. As an activist on the tar sands pipelines in Texas, we've been working for over 3 years against a permit that the Enbridge company needed to reverse the Seaway pipeline. I did not know the Pegasus pipeline had already been reversed. And I understand some of you didn't even know the pipeline was there. I grew up in the middle of the oil and gas industry. My father worked 36 years for a major oil company. And he had a good pension and he had health insurance even after he retired. And he was retired for 14 years and he died at the age of 76. And even after he died, my stepmother got a survivor's pension and the health insurance continued. So whatever Medicare didn't pay for, the company insurance paid for. So I have only good things to say about how the company treated my parents. Now, we lived in an oil refinery town, and it was a pretty little town. But when visitors would come to town, they would notice the stink. And of course, those of you who know gasoline and petroleum distillates affect your olfactory nerves. Once you smell it for a few minutes, then you can't smell anything anymore. So we didn't know it stank unless we went out of town for an extended period of time. The kids called the creek near the refinery Acid Creek. And we'd go down there and we'd find dead dogs or birds. Anything that drank out of that creek would die. There were no frogs, no tadpoles. Of course, Daddy said, don't touch it, and he really didn't want us going down there. It was about that time when I was growing up that we had to stop fishing in the river because the catfish we caught tasted like oil. And we just thought that's the way things had to be. We didn't know any better. Remember, the first Earth Day was in 1972, and the Environmental Protection Agency was founded in 1973. That's when the government hired a college professor 45 miles away from the university. He had a contract to come up and do water sampling upstream and downstream of the oil refinery. So the company started, using closed pits, and they couldn't just flush things into the creek anymore. But my dad did tell me how the bosses laughed and said when there was a big rainstorm, they could go down there and turn the spigot again and put the stuff down the creek and the professor wouldn't find it. Over the years, however, they did clean up things, they did improve things. One thing they didn't change was the tank farm. It was a big hill, and they started building tanks there for storage. They're great big round building structures with a top on them. And the ones in the 1920s were built without a bottom in them. In the 1940s, they started putting bottoms in the tanks, but my dad said, depending on different circumstances, those bottoms would rust out after between 10 and 20 years. And the law didn't make them change that. Well, after 50 to 70 years of that stuff slowly seeping through the ground, and I think you all in Northwood have seen how that stuff flows, but it will ooze into the ground and get under your foundations. This stuff started coming up in people's basements near the refinery. And of course, what had nothing to do with the refinery, was not coming from their property until one person actually started pumping high-test gasoline out of his basement. And he was filtering it and using it, and then the company said, hey, you can't use that. And we're like, but you said it wasn't yours. In 1990, they bought out 400 houses near the refinery. And it's a buffer zone around the refinery. They didn't clean the dirt up, but at least the people were moved out of it. Things didn't change until there were laws that made change. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. We all complained because we had to buy catalytic converters on our new cars, but that did reduce the air pollution. We all, thought, well, what little bit I pollute is not impacting things. Well, it does. What the companies do, what we do individually, so we have laws, we make some changes. A lot of people think that the things each of us are doing for climate change, and especially the big industrial things, are not the problem, but they are, and we do need laws before things get different. Let's see if I can get this to.
Did you turn it on?
Yes, yeah, it's on.
Okay, it may be too far away. I can click it for you.
Okay, let's pass. Go on to the next one, please.
Okay.
Next one. This photo is called Earthrise. It was taken in 1968 by the astronaut from Apollo 8. And this is another thing this is from Apollo 17, taken as the crew was going between the Earth and the Moon. It's taken halfway. Is it running on a slideshow? Can you stop it?
I don't know.
Can you back it up one more?
Your clicker should work now. It helps when you get it in.
Yeah. This is the last photo ever taken from that vantage point. It was taken in 1972. It's unusual because it shows the whole Earth. This is about the time that our consciousness, I think, as the civilization on Earth, changed to begin to understand and value the Earth, and that we're all part of it, the big blue marble. And it's certainly important to understand that in our, okay, so it won't work, the videos won't work, okay. This is a video that shows one full revolution of the Earth. Thinking about our climate and our weather systems, they are worldwide. Things from one part of the Earth do impact the other. This is taken from the Galileo orbiter as it left the Earth's gravity. So we've changed our viewpoint and our consciousness. Now we want to look at, and our climate scientists have been looking at the Earth. Again, we're not getting the video, so I'll just...
Let me see if I can get it to play. Just a moment. You have a video embedded in this picture?
No, it calls it up. That's the last video we'll try to do if we can get it to work.
I'm not seeing the video embedded.
Try running it, back it up one, try running it slideshow from the current thing and see if it'll call it up. Is it running on slideshow now? Slideshow from the current?
Yeah, that's what I put it on, but it's not running the video.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We must have the, okay, put it back on so we can do it like that. The purpose of that map, which is a really neat thing, is it goes through, this is from 1951 to 1980, which is pretty much the growing up time of someone of my age. They took the mean and then they looked back at the global temperatures from 1984 through 2011, and what it will show is the orange and red parts of the Earth showing the impact of global warming. It's a good visual, but I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, and this is real basic science stuff, but not all of us are, have the same understanding about how important our atmosphere is. We know that the sun radiation comes through and passes through our atmosphere and warms the earth and the oceans. Part of that energy is radiated back. It's that the short light waves reach out from the earth, and some of the outgoing radiation is trapped. It bounces off layers in the atmosphere, and this warms it. This was discovered 200 years ago by Joseph Tyndall. It was proven then in the laboratory that there are what we can call greenhouse gases. He called them trace gases. Things like carbon dioxide that are a very small portion of the atmosphere do create this greenhouse effect. It's been known for a long time. It's nothing new, but the impacts the major impacts and big changes started with the industrialization when we started burning coal and other fuels. So how important is an atmosphere? And this is the Earth, this is Venus. Does it matter how close you are to the sun? Well, certainly. Here's the Earth. We have our atmosphere. Here's Venus. It has more of an atmosphere and more greenhouse gases. It's about the same size we are. But our global temperature average is about 15 degrees centigrade. There's Venus. It's 457 degrees centigrade. It is a little closer to the sun than the Earth, but it's the atmosphere that makes it that warm. We look at Mercury, which is even closer to the sun. It has almost no atmosphere. And so its warming is caused by the sun without any atmospheric contribution. The Earth, where we've lived it, is like sometimes called the Goldilocks planet, not too much, not too little. But the carbon cycle, plants breathe it in, they give off oxygen, animals breathe oxygen, they give off carbon dioxide. That cycle was pretty much in balance. The balance has been changed by industrial activity. This is the most important thing that I learned in studying climate change because I didn't know this. This is an image from the International Space Station. And it's, the horizon, that's the sun coming up, and this is visible areas of the atmosphere. The most important thing is the atmosphere is very thin. Here's the Earth, here's the atmosphere. But our senses give us a different feeling. When we're standing looking up in the sky, it looks infinite. Except here in Arkansas, you got trees. In Texas, we don't, but you can see really far. You can see further in the sky than you can on the land. And of course, you're not looking at the entire mass of the Earth. The atmosphere is not infinite. It is very thin. Carl Sagan and others have tried to give us analogies. It's like an apple, and the skin on the apple is the atmosphere. Or a basketball, if you put saran wrap around a basketball, the saran wrap, that is how thin the atmosphere is. And we're using it as an open sewer. This is Japan. They put their smokestacks up above the normal cloud cover. We used to let everybody dump anything they wanted to into the rivers. We tried to stop that, and now we're asking people to consider how can we stop using the air as an open sewer. The 12 hottest years on record for all except for one in this century, after the year 2000. The hottest year ever measured statistically was 2010. 2012 was the 36th consecutive year with a global temperature above the 20th century average. June 2013 was the 340th consecutive month with a global temperature above the 20th century average. I just got the data for 2013, but I haven't been able to update my slides yet. 2012 was a real record. Let's just look at this last one. In the contiguous United States, 2012 was the hottest year in recorded history. These are the daily heat records for June and July of 2012. The yellow dots, 1,875. The record heat days were tied. 4,800 and some records were broken. Many times the same place on the map set records more than once. These were daily heat records in 2012. The hottest month ever measured in the U.S. was July 2012. Some of you may have seen this on the news. This is National Airport in Washington, D.C. That airliner could not take off. Its wheel sank into the pavement. The pavement got so hot it melted. These are the global emissions from fossil fuels. It wasn't just 2012. This has been going on since 1850, the beginning of industrialization. You can see how the carbon came here. You can almost see where the Great Depression was in the U.S. See, from the 1950s, it's not only been the U.S., it's been a recovery of Europe and Asia and other countries. And this is the increase. These are the emissions, something like 90 tons of carbon a day we're putting into that very thin atmosphere. Where do greenhouse gases come from? This is human activity. We all think, I don't make that much of a change. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see agriculture, there's the oil refinery, burning forests. All of this is contributing to additional carbon in the atmosphere. So what does this mean? This is CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. This is today, and we were going back 100,000, 200,000, back 800,000 years before the present time. This is global average temperature. You can see that. Last year, and it's running up there, in 2013, way up here, carbon dioxide was measured at the most we've ever been able to measure it in human history, 400 parts per million. That happened in Hawaii. And what's our big concern? This is what we had in 400 parts per million. If we continue the same rate of increase, in 40 more years, we expect it to be 600 parts per million. These are the way summer temperatures, they've normalized this. The baseline is 1951 to 1980. So these are the number of days with temperatures around the average. These are cooler than average, warmer than average. When we go to 1981 to 1991, look at the shift. Fewer average days, fewer cooler days, more hot days. 1991 to 2001, the same thing, the shift. And look at this is extremely hot. This is the shift. This is the data. This is what actually happened. 2001 to 2011, one of the most important things is look at the extremely hot days. These temperatures used to occur on 0.1% of the Earth. They now happen in 10% of the Earth. Jim Hansen recently retired. He was the #1 scientist at NASA, the foremost climate scientist in the United States, and he was talking about the European heat wave in 2003 where dozens of people died, and the Texas and Oklahoma drought in 2010 coming from climate change. This is a statement about the only plausible explanation for the increased major weather catastrophes is climate change. This is from Munich Re. Munich Re is a reinsurer. This is a corporation that makes its money by estimating risks, and they reinsure other risks that companies have done. And they're used to looking at data. They look at models. They may not be scientists, but whether or not they make money depends on their analysis, and they believe climate change is causing the weather catastrophe. Here's our linkage between climate and weather events. As CO2 increases in the atmosphere and global temperature goes up, these are get a little bit carried away with something. This is CO2 concentration, and this is the global average temperature. These are the hockey stick graphs, if you've heard that term. They show a correlation. This is global ocean heat content. From 1960 to 2010, the oceans are warmer. Why does that matter? Our colors are getting a little washed out here, but you can see the redder areas coming in. October 2012, why did that matter? Here in the U.S., the water was 5 degrees warmer than the historic average, and that was Hurricane Sandy. You can go back and see you all know, the warmer the water is, the stronger the storms get, and now they're getting bigger. As the temperatures increase over the ocean, then they evaporate more moisture into the sky. Warmer air holds a lot more water vapor. We all know that. When it cools off in the morning, the dew comes out, right? When it heats up in the middle of the afternoon, the humidity in the air goes up. With each additional 1 degree centigrade of temperature, the atmosphere increases its ability to hold water vapor by 7%. We already have 4% more water in the vapor over the oceans than just 30 years ago. This is a change in annual global temperature from 1850 to 2010. They normalized it. Okay, here's the average. So from 1850 to about 1930, we tended to cycle below average. This is the lived experience of most of us. Look at that cycling. So we're used to, it's really extreme this year, it'll be the opposite in a couple of years. But look what's been going on since 1980. It's above average. It's cycling up and down, but it's above average. This is how the increase in heavy precipitation days follows the same kind of pattern. Looking at the average, it used to be mainly below average. We saw this cycle in our lifetimes, and now we're getting major increases. There's fewer small storms and much more big storms. We get more rain, more snow, bigger and more intense. That causes bigger and more frequent floods, and not just in the U.S. I can show you from all this: Argentina, Greece, the Czech Republic. This city has been there. It has not had floods in that area for over 500 years. They knew where their floods were. They didn't build there. This is San Antonio. I could show you hundreds from all over and all continents. As global temperatures continue to increase, the water cycle intensifies. What we get is bigger downpours, but that leads to longer and deeper droughts. I'm going to skip through that. There's bigger intervals between rain and drought-stricken areas. And when the earth is dry, more water evaporates, it gets hotter, the droughts are worse and longer. This is U.S. drought conditions in 2010. Exceptional drought in Arkansas. How rare is that? I worked in water resources for 30 years. The water resource problem in Arkansas is flooding, getting the water away from it, and yet you've been subjected to drought the last few years, drought that hadn't been experienced in recent memory. In 32 states that year, there were counties that were declared disaster areas because of drought. That's 75% of the United States. This is a forest fire in Spain. Well, but how does that relate? Because forest fires occur when it's dry and hot. This is Australia. Their forest fires were visible from space. Hotter years typically have more fires. This is the average temperature in the western United States. Here's the number of fires. We're not just hearing about them more, they are occurring more. This is a picture of the Muir Glacier in Alaska in 1880. That ice took hundreds of years to form. Here it is in the same place, the same view, 2005. The glacier is gone, and this is happening all over the world. So we know we have to change. We can't keep sending our soldiers and our money overseas to fight war for oil. We can't have the devastation that happened. This is the Deepwater Horizon, and this is Mayflower, Arkansas. It's all part of the same fossil fuel combustion. And we have solutions at hand. This is a 14-year-old in Malawi. He's powering his village with a windmill. I think that's a bicycle part up there. Turkey, Kenya, Oregon, I could show you slides from all over the world. They are moving to wind power. What's important about the photocell production is really taken off since 2000. This is the megawatt hours per year of production. Not much in 2000, 25,000, almost 25,000 megawatts per year, and that was in 2010. These are the installations of solar cells in our country. Here's 2010. 2011, it was an increase of 122%. 2012, it went up another 75%. As production increased, the cost has gone down. This is the the Vatican. It's the smallest country in the world. It's now going to, all of its energy comes from a solar array. In 2010, renewable investment exceeded investment for new fossil fuel facilities for the very first time. These are the countries with carbon policies. I went to that training with people from 170 countries, and I learned that the governments and the citizens of other countries recognize climate change and are doing something about it. The 4 countries that are not, United Kingdom, Canada, the United States, and Australia, we have climate denial paid for by the fossil fuel industry. Inaction is their friend. And what are some of the other similarities besides English speaking? Corporate broadcast media. We do not have government broadcast media. High costs to broadcast. We do not have public funding of elections. Politicians, to get their message out, need contributions. And their biggest contributors are the fossil fuel industry. Even China realizes that they cannot keep polluting their people with the coal. They have set up a cap and trade system in 5 provinces, and they are going to test this. And Australia also is doing that. So is Mexico. They're going to figure out how to do this. This is something that the fossil fuel industry is extremely unhappy with. This is where we have renewable energy policies by state. These states have goals. I know Arkansas is considering this. I read their plan to go into that. We also know that ALEC, which is funded primarily by the fossil fuel industry, is working with state legislatures. They have a big campaign to reverse renewable energy goals and policies by states that were held off last year, and they're coming back again strong this year. In 10 years, if we had a race to the moon, the same way we did in the 1960s with public investment, we could use our petroleum only for vehicles, medicine, and other vital needs. We don't have to burn the dirtiest fuel like tar sands. Remember BP talking about beyond petroleum, and they went in and you know what they figured out? If they don't have this, if they don't have fuel to sell, if your fuel is almost free, like in wind and solar, they can make a profit out of it. This becomes a public good. This becomes something that people collectively can manage because it's maintenance, it's distribution, it's not profitable. They're not going to be able to stop it, but as long as they keep climate denial going, they can make it take longer. And that's why they are rushing the dirtiest fuels to market, so that they can dig up these reserves and sell them in 10 or 20 years, because otherwise it will be worthless. And they're doing this regardless of the cost to your health. I think I'll end there. And if anybody wants to talk more about solutions at some time, I'd be glad to. I don't want to be just totally negative, but I also know you want to get other things on this program. Yeah, are there any questions right now? Thank you very much.